battlefield is changing fast, and Ukraine just got a terrifying glimpse of America's latest weapon. After a massive upgrade, the legendary A-10 Warthog is back, stronger, deadlier, and built to dominate modern warfare. Reports say the US has finally tested this beast, and the results are sending shockwaves across the world. Is this the game changer Ukraine has been waiting for? And how will Russia react? Join us as we reveal the upgraded Super A-10 Warthog and its devastating new capabilities. The A-10 Warthog is a beast of an aircraft built for one job: obliterating ground targets while shrugging off damage like it's nothing. Unlike supersonic jets that struggle to hit moving ground targets, the A-10 cruises at around 350 miles per hour, making it the perfect hunter in close-quarters combat. Its wings and control surfaces are built using a tough honeycomb structure that keeps them lightweight but incredibly strong. The ailerons, those flaps at the back of the wings, are huge, nearly half the wingspan, giving the A-10 incredible maneuverability at low speeds. This plane isn't flashy, and it doesn't break speed records. But when troops on the ground need serious backup, the A-10 is the ultimate guardian angel: rugged, reliable, and absolutely terrifying for anything unlucky enough to be in its sights. The A-10 entered service in 1976 with the 355th Tactical Training Wing in Arizona, followed by the 354th Tactical Fighter Wing in South Carolina a year later. From there, it spread its wings to bases across the US and overseas, including Alaska, South Korea, and multiple locations in Europe. It even made a home at RAF Bentwaters and RAF Woodbridge in England, where it trained for missions over Germany. But despite its battlefield potential, the Warthog wasn't welcomed with open arms. Fighter pilots used to sleek, high-speed jets saw it as slow and ugly, hardly the kind of aircraft they wanted to fly. That perception changed in 1987 when the A-10 took on a new role as a forward air control aircraft, designated the OA-10. In this role, it carried Hydra rockets tipped with smoke or white phosphorus, marking targets for other attack aircraft. But make no mistake, despite the new name, the OA-10 remained as lethal as the original Warthog, fully armed and ready for combat. Its first real test came in 1983 during Operation Urgent Fury, when US forces invaded Grenada. A-10s were deployed to provide air cover for Marine landings, though no enemy resistance meant they never had to fire a shot. That all changed in 1991 during the Gulf War, when 132 A-10s were sent into battle. The Warthog proved its worth, scoring 2 air-to-air takeouts against Iraqi helicopters, one down by Captain Robert Swain with the legendary GAU-8 Avenger cannon. The A-10 Warthog has seen its fair share of danger, and while it proved to be a battlefield powerhouse, it wasn't invincible. During the Gulf War, 4 were shot down by enemy fire, and 11 others took hits but kept flying. 2 more suffered critical damage and didn't return to service, with some crash landing beyond repair. The early days of the war saw A-10s tearing through Iraqi forces, but by mid-February, their missions were limited to safer zones near the southern border due to heavy losses. Even then, they kept hunting down Iraqi Scud missile launchers, proving their worth time and time again. The A-10s flew over 8,100 missions, fired most Maverick missiles used in the war, and kept a stunning 95.7% mission success rate. Any doubts about replacing them with an F-16 variant quickly faded. After the Gulf War, the Warthog continued to make its mark. In Bosnia during the mid-90s, A-10s unleashed around 10,000 rounds of 30mm fire, targeting stolen heavy weapons in the hands of Bosnian Serbs. One mission on August 1994 saw 2 Warthogs tracking down and destroying an anti-tank vehicle, forcing the enemy to surrender the rest of their stolen arsenal. A year later, when NATO launched Operation Deliberate Force, A-10s were again in the middle of the action, taking out artillery positions and fortifications. Even after the operation ended, they continued to patrol the skies, ensuring no further threats emerged. By 1999, the Warthog was back in action over Kosovo. First deployed for search and rescue missions, it was quickly reassigned to its speciality, obliterating enemy positions. Its first major strike happened on April 6th, and it remained in combat until the war ended in June. Despite its legendary status, the A-10 didn't join the early stages of the Afghanistan invasion in 2001, but it was back in the fight by March 2002. Deployed to bases in Pakistan and Afghanistan, it became a key player in Operation Anaconda, attacking Taliban and Al-Qaeda fighters in the mountains. Even after the operation officially ended, A-10s remained in the region, hunting down enemy forces in one of the longest deployments of their history. When war erupted again in 2003, the A-10 was ready. 60 of these battle-proven beasts took to the skies in the early stages of Operation Iraqi Freedom, unleashing destruction with brutal efficiency. The aircraft maintained an impressive 85% mission success rate, firing over 311,000 rounds of 30 millimeters of ammo, and even dropping propaganda leaflets to weaken enemy morale. Despite its resilience, one A-10 was lost near Baghdad International Airport after taking heavy fire. By 2007, the A-10 had evolved. The upgraded A-10C, featuring advanced digital targeting and communication systems, made its combat debut with the Maryland Air National Guard. This new tech allowed pilots to lock onto targets faster and hit with even more precision. Over the next few years, the A-10 remained the workhorse of close air support, flying a staggering number of missions, between 27,000, 800 and 34,500 every year from 2009 to 2012. Even in 2013, it stayed busy in Afghanistan, logging over 11,000 sorties in 6 months. Between 2006 and 2013, A-10s handled 19% of all close air support missions in Iraq and Afghanistan. That was more than the powerful F-15E and the massive B-1B bomber, though the F-16 flew slightly more. But when it came to pure battlefield dominance, few could match the Warthog. In 2011, the A-10 was called into action once again, this time over Libya. As part of Operation Odyssey Dawn, these aircraft tore through Libyan ground forces, proving they were still one of the deadliest tools in the U.S. arsenal. Then came 2014. The 122nd Fighter Wing was already set for deployment to the Middle East, but with ISIS gaining ground, their mission took on new urgency. By mid-November, A-10s were pounding ISIS positions in central and northwestern Iraq almost daily. Every time one took off, the message was clear. Survival wasn't an option for its targets. Over just 2 months, the A-10 flew 11% of all U.S. Air Force missions in the region, once again proving its unmatched dominance in combat. Yet despite its battlefield success, the U.S. Air Force had already made up its mind. It was time to retire the A-10 Warthog. They deemed it outdated and unfit for modern warfare, and planned to replace it with the high-tech F-35 Lightning II, shifting $4.2 billion toward the transition. But there was one major problem. Congress wasn't having it. Many lawmakers had flown the A-10 themselves or knew someone whose life had been saved. They weren't about to let the Air Force scrap the most reliable close air support aircraft without a fight. If the Pentagon wanted to retire the Warthog, they had to prove the F-35 could do everything the A-10 could, and do it better. Not only did Congress block the retirement, but they also demanded the A-10 receive upgrades to reach its full potential. This meant the Air Force had to improve the very aircraft they were trying to phase out, making the battle over its future even more intense. On November 15, 2015, just 2 days after the devastating Paris attacks, A-10s, along with AC-130s, obliterated a convoy of over 100 ISIS-controlled oil tanker trucks in Syria. It was part of Operation Tidal Wave 2, a relentless effort to cripple the terrorist group's oil smuggling and cut off its financial lifeline. The mission's name echoed a failed Second World War raid, but failure wasn't an option this time, only destruction. Despite the A-10 building a reputation as one of the deadliest warplanes ever designed, its legacy wasn't without controversy. On December 8, 1988, disaster struck in Remscheid, West Germany. An A-10A slammed into an apartment building, taking the life of the pilot and 6 others, while injuring 50 more, some severely. Investigators blame bad weather and pilot disorientation, but years later, a terrifying trend emerged. Cancer rates in the area spiked. Some speculated the plane had carried depleted uranium rounds despite official U.S. denials. Then Captain Craig D. Button did the unthinkable on April 2, 1997. Flying out of Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, his A-10 suddenly veered hundreds of miles off course. He ignored radio calls, made no attempt to eject, and crashed into a Colorado mountainside. His passing was ruled a suicide, but the mystery deepened when it was revealed that his aircraft had been carrying live bombs that were never found. March 28, 2003, added another grim chapter. A British soldier, Lance Corporal Matty Hull, was taken out in a friendly fire incident when A-10 pilots mistook their allies for enemies. 5 others were wounded. Between 2010 and 2015, no U.S. aircraft was responsible for more civilian casualties in Afghanistan than the A-10. It also accounted for multiple friendly fire incidents, taking the lives of 10 American troops. Despite these tragedies, one truth remained. The A-10 was too deadly and effective to retire. Military strategists knew it had flaws, but they also learned one thing. The enemy had nowhere to hide when the A-10 was in the sky. By the 26th, the Air Force had decided that the Warthog would stay. Political pressure, growing conflicts, and the F-35 rollout forced the Pentagon to backtrack on its plan to retire the aircraft. Congress blocked attempts to scrap it. Military leaders demanded its return, and combat situations proved it was still unmatched. The first wave of upgrades, Suite 8, made the Warthog an even more lethal beast. It received a lightweight V-12 airborne recovery system, making communication between A-10 pilots and ground forces, including downed pilots and special ops teams, more seamless than ever. This allowed it to provide even tighter close air support and take on a bigger role in search and rescue missions. Then came the firepower revolution. The Warthog, once forced to get dangerously close to its targets, now packed long-range standoff weapons. Instead of diving into enemy crosshairs, it could rain destruction from a distance. This flipped the script. Who needed fancy dogfighting moves when raw firepower could do the job? But the upgrades didn't stop there. Pilots were given new tricks to dominate the night. Advanced night vision systems allowed them to strike from low altitudes in total darkness. Meanwhile, the Warthog's rockets got an insane speed boost. AGR-20 precision rockets could now reload 4 times faster, meaning more destruction in less time. Then came Suite 9, loaded with even more game-changing tech. A brand new situational awareness pad was added, making life easier for ground troops. Joint Terminal Attack Controllers could send their exact locations digitally instead of scrambling to mark their positions with flares or radios. No more guessing, no more confusion, just instant coordination. To eliminate friendly fire risks, the Warthog received a new targeting system that verified targets before striking. On a chaotic battlefield, this upgrade could mean the difference between a successful mission and a disaster. And if one target wasn't enough, the Warthog could now hit up to 6 enemies at once, all with the push of a single button. Its weapon choices range from 500-pound explosives to massive 2,000-pound JDAMs, ensuring it could handle any job. To make things even better, pilots got high-tech Hobbit helmets, which tracked head movements in real time, making aiming faster and deadlier than ever. With all these upgrades, the Warthog transformed into something far beyond its original design, a war machine capable of thriving in the toughest conditions with minimal support. But all the fancy tech in the world meant nothing without a true test. Congress wasn't satisfied with specs and reports. They wanted a showdown, A-10 versus F-35, a high-stakes face-off to decide the true king of close air support. The Air Force wasn't exactly thrilled about a fair fight. Whispers spread that they stacked the deck in the F-35's favor, designing tests that ignored the A-10's biggest strengths. To make things worse, the entire competition was shrouded in secrecy, leaving people more frustrated than informed. Now let's talk about the F-35. It's sleek, fast, and packed with cutting-edge tech. But when it comes to close air support, it has a serious problem. The A-10 was built to fly low and slow, circling the battlefield like a vulture. The F-35? Not so much. It wasn't designed to loiter over enemy territory, and its fancy avionics couldn't change that. The A-10, on the other hand, was practically glued to the ground. It flew so low that troops could probably high-five the pilot. And because that kind of flying made it an easy target, Engineers built it with a titanium bathtub underneath, designed to soak up bullets and keep the pilot alive. Yet despite the Warthog's unmatched ability to take punishment and deliver devastating firepower, the Air Force seemed more concerned with ensuring the F-35 stayed in the spotlight. To be fair, there was a $400 billion reason behind that. The F-35 wasn't just another aircraft, but the most expensive weapons program in Pentagon history. The Air Force had sunk so much money into it that they were determined to make it do everything, from air superiority to ground attacks, and maybe even serving coffee in the break room. But just when it seemed like the Warthog was being pushed into the shadows, the game changed when Suite 10, the biggest upgrade in A-10 history, was introduced. The so-called Super A-10 was a beast. It came armed with AGR-20 APKWS missiles, JDOM kits that turned dumb bombs into precision-guided nightmares, and small-diameter bombs capable of locking onto multiple targets at once. With these upgrades, the Warthog could theoretically wipe out 18 enemy positions in a single pass, simultaneously hitting them with 3 different types of weapons. But that was just the beginning. A brand new synthetic aperture radar transformed the A-10 into a precision hunter, locking onto targets with deadly accuracy. And thanks to Boeing, it got a major hardware boost, 173 fresh sets of wings, each tough enough to last 10,000 flight hours without breaking a sweat. But if that wasn't enough, the Air Force doubled down with another wave of reinforcements, launching an attack program to deliver 112 more wing sets. The upgrades didn't stop there. The Warthog was getting a cutting-edge data link system, letting multiple A-10s share battlefield intelligence in real time. This meant pilots could track threats faster, work together better, and stay alive longer, solving one of the biggest concerns about the aircraft's survival in modern warfare. With these advancements, the A-10 wasn't just holding on to its place in the skies, but securing its role as an unstoppable close air support platform. Whether flying solo or alongside the F-35, it was clear that the Warthog wasn't going anywhere. Seeing how well the A-10 was adapting, the Air Force decided to push things even further. If the F-35 was packed with cutting-edge tech, why not bring the Warthog into the future too? So, at Eglin Air Force Base in Florida, the Air Force began non-stop testing for what would have been known as Suite 11. Suite 11 wasn't just another round of updates, it was a revolution. Using agile development methods, the Air Force aimed to roll out upgrades faster than ever, keeping the A-10 ahead of the curve in a digital battlefield. The list of enhancements was impressive: a jam-resistant GPS, an immersive 3D surround sound cockpit, a next-gen ARC-210 radio, and a massive 11.6-inch high-resolution display, far beyond anything the A-10 had before. The new cockpit, featuring the high-resolution display system, was a game-changer. It replaced outdated, clunky controls with a digital interface that provided crystal-clear targeting footage, an advanced mapping system, and a sleek flight display. For pilots, this meant better accuracy, faster decision-making, and a smoother ride, marking the biggest cockpit upgrade since the A-10's last major overhaul in 2005. After a 3-year absence, the Warthog returned to Afghanistan in January 2018. A dozen battle-hardened jets roared into Kandahar, ready to do what they did best: obliterate enemy forces. When Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, some military analysts suggested sending A-10s to Kyiv. Ukrainian Defense Minister Oleksiy Reznikov even requested 100 surplus jets from the US, believing their tank-busting power would be a game-changer. However, the Pentagon refused, calling the A-10 too slow and an easy target for Russian air defenses. But the Warthog story didn't end there. In late 2024, they were back in action over Syria, tearing through enemy vehicles, mortar positions, and even a Soviet-era T-64 tank. Then on December 8th, as the Assad regime collapsed, A-10s teamed up with B-52s and F-15Es in a brutal bombing campaign. Over 75 ISIS positions were wiped out in days, ensuring the terrorist group couldn't take advantage of the chaos. So where do you stand? Do you side with the old-school brute force of the Warthog, or do you put your faith in the cutting-edge F-35? Thanks for watching. While you are still here, click on the link on your screen to check out another of our videos. See you there.